My mom told my daughter she wasn't invited to her birthday in front of the whole family. Nobody reacted. So I sent her a gift she'll never forget opening in front of everyone who stayed silent. My mother said it the way you cancel a dentist appointment. 9 words. Calm, unhurried, with the mild finality of someone checking an item off a list. Your daughter is not invited to my birthday party. Maddie was sitting right next to me, 12 years old. Hands wrapped around her paper napkin in 2 tight fists, the way she holds things when she is trying not to show that something has landed. She had been reaching for the bread basket when my mother said it. Her hand stopped in the air, then she put it back in her lap. She didn't cry. That was the part that broke something loose in my chest. Not the words. I had enough history with my mother to absorb words. It was my daughter's face, the specific, practiced stillness of a child who has been surprised by this particular kind of pain before and has already learned how to make herself smaller around it. 12 years old and already trained. Nobody at the table reacted. My sister Renee found something extremely interesting in her salad. My father became absorbed in his water glass with the concentration of a man diffusing a device. Aunt Pat reached for the dinner rolls and said nothing, because Aunt Pat had been saying nothing at this table for 30 years and saw no reason to change course now. The kids' table is full, my mother added. Lighter now, breezy. The tone of a woman offering a reasonable explanation to a person she expects to accept it. I looked down the length of the table. 2 empty chairs, 2 clean place settings. Not a single place card in sight. My mother did not have oversights. She had decisions. I placed my napkin beside my plate. Maddie, get your coat, sweetheart. Her name is Claire Bishop, my mother. She turned 65 in October. She is a woman of considerable social intelligence and zero self-awareness about the distance between those two things, the particular combination that produces someone who is very good at managing rooms and genuinely baffled when the people in those rooms eventually stop cooperating. I am her older daughter. My name is Laura. I am 34 years old and I run a CPA firm in Columbus with 11 employees and a client list that took 8 years to build from a folding table in my spare bedroom. I have a daughter named Maddie, who is 12, whose father has not been part of our lives since she was 3, and who is, I want this said clearly and without performance, one of the finest people I have ever known. Curious, careful, capable of a quality of attention to the people around her that most adults never develop. Maddie had made my mother a birthday card, construction paper, careful marker letters, a hand-drawn cake with 65 individually counted candles. She had made it the week before the dinner at our kitchen table, tongue slightly out in concentration the way she concentrates. She had planned to give it at the party. That's the part I keep coming back to. She had made it before she knew. I need to tell you about the house on Linden Street because nothing that comes after makes sense without it. 12 years ago, my parents' mortgage went underwater. This was 2012, the tail end of the foreclosure wave, and my parents had refinanced at exactly the wrong moment for exactly the wrong reasons, and were now approximately $40,000 upside down on a house in a market that wasn't recovering quickly. I was 22, 8 months pregnant with Maddie, working 2 jobs and living in a studio apartment and sending them $200 a month from money I genuinely did not have because they genuinely needed it. I could not save the house then. That failure haunted me for years, the specific guilt of a person who could see a problem clearly and had absolutely no capacity to solve it. My parents eventually lost the house. They rented for 4 years while the neighborhood stabilized, and I built my career and learned to sleep again. 6 years ago, when I had what I would cautiously describe as real money for the first time, I bought it back. The house on Linden Street had gone to auction in 2014, been purchased by an investor, rented out, allowed to decline, and come back to market in 2018 in worse shape than my parents had left it. I paid $214,000. I put $38,000 into repairs. I drew up a lease at $1 a year and put my parents' names on it and handed them the keys and told them it was home and they never needed to worry about it again. I paid the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance, the maintenance. When the furnace started failing 2 winters ago, I had it serviced twice and made a note to myself about replacement timelines. When my father had his bypass in 2021 and the gap between Medicare and the actual bill was $14,200, I wrote a check and told him not to think about it. I handled their prescriptions when the insurance changed and the copays jumped. I paid the catering deposit for my mother's birthday party, $100 in August, before the invitations went out, before I had any reason to know my daughter's name would not appear on the guest list. I had been the invisible foundation of my family for 6 years. The word invisible is doing precise work there, not unappreciated. That implies they knew and chose not to express it. Invisible means they had, I think, genuinely stopped seeing it. The money arrived and the bills were paid and the house was warm and the party was being catered, and that was simply the condition of their lives. Where it came from had become as unremarkable as weather. And my mother had just told my 12-year-old daughter, in front of a table full of family, that she wasn't quite one of theirs. The drive home was quiet. Maddie sat in the back seat of my Subaru with her forehead against the window, watching the streetlights pass. 3 blocks down Maple, she said it. The question in the small voice she uses when she's already half convinced of the answer and is hoping to be corrected. Mom, did I do something wrong? I gripped the wheel, 2 hands, knuckles adjusting. Nothing, I said. You did absolutely nothing wrong. She was quiet for the rest of the drive. I watched her in the rearview mirror and I thought about the 2 empty chairs at that table and the light, dismissive way my mother had said the kids' table is full, and I thought about about all the other small moments that had preceded this one. The moments I had filed and rationalized and moved past because they were each individually explicable, and it was only in aggregate that they became something else entirely. The first moment I should have weighted more carefully was Maddie's 9th birthday. I had invited my parents to her party. A small thing, a dozen kids from her class at a paint-your-own pottery place on 5th Street. My mother came, stayed 40 minutes, spent most of it talking to my sister Renee about a kitchen renovation, and left before the cake. She told me on the way out that she had a thing. I told myself she was busy. She was a woman with a social life, and I couldn't expect her to treat every childhood birthday like an anchor event. Maddie had noticed she'd left before cake. She didn't say anything, just looked at the door for a moment, and I had redirected us towards singing loudly enough to cover it. The second moment was Thanksgiving 2021. Maddie had been telling my mother about a project she was doing for school, something about local watershed ecology, which Maddie had become briefly but intensely passionate about in the way she becomes passionate about things. She was mid-sentence, detailed, animated, the version of herself she is when something genuinely interests her. My mother turned to my father and asked him to pass the gravy, while Maddie was still speaking. I watched Maddie's sentence trail off, watched her look at her plate, watched her reach for her fork with the particular arrangement of her face that I had started to recognize, the look of a child recalibrating downward, deciding again that she had overestimated how interesting she was to this particular audience. I said, Maddie was telling us about the watershed project. My mother said, yes. Renee, did you end up calling that contractor? The third moment was Easter 2022. My mother was sorting out the Easter egg hunt and assigning the younger kids to different areas of the backyard. She named every grandchild. She did not name Maddie. When I pointed it out, she said, oh, of course, and added her in. But the correction had the quality of adding a name to a list that had already been closed, rather than genuinely including someone who had been genuinely forgotten. I told myself it was an oversight. My mother was coordinating a lot of moving pieces. The fourth moment was the August dinner. Not the October one I started with. An earlier one in August, when I happened to see the party invitation list on my mother's kitchen counter while I was putting away groceries. I wasn't snooping. I was putting away groceries. The list was there. Maddie's name was not on it. I stood in my mother's kitchen holding a can of diced tomatoes, and I looked at that list for a long time. Then I put the tomatoes away and told myself I had misread it, or that it was a draft, or that the final list would be different. I paid the $1,100 catering deposit 2 days later because it was due, and the party was something I had agreed to help with, and I had never in my life stopped doing something I had agreed to do simply because I was uneasy about something I might have misread. I had not misread it. The fifth moment was the dinner table. 9 words, my daughter's hands around her napkin. That was the moment I stopped filing things and started adding them up. That night, I found Maddie on her bedroom floor. I had assumed she was asleep. It was after 10. She had been quiet for the whole evening, had eaten the dinner I made without tasting it, had done her homework with mechanical efficiency, had said goodnight in the voice she used when she was somewhere else entirely. I came past her door at 10:14 p.m., and the light was still on, thin under the door. I pushed it open. She was on the floor with her back against the bed, legs stretched out. In her hands was the birthday card, construction paper, careful marker letters, the cake with 65 individually counted candles. She had made it the week before she knew. I stood in the doorway and I watched her look at it. Not crying, not angry, just looking at it the way you look at something that was true when you made it and is less true now. She turned it over once, turned it back, then she opened her backpack, held the card for one more moment, tore it in half, quietly, down the middle, not violently. There was no performance in it, just done. She placed both halves in her trash can, zipped her bag, and reached up to turn off her bedside lamp. She didn't see me. I pressed my hand flat against the wall in the hallway and stood there for a while. Maddie had been learning something, repetition by repetition, dinner by dinner, oversight by oversight. She had been learning that she was the one who could be left off the list, that her grandmother's house was a place where she reduced herself and expected less and made herself quieter, and it still wasn't quite enough. You don't tear up a card for someone you still expect to love you back. She had decided to stop expecting. 12 years old, I went to my office, I opened my laptop, I did not sleep. Monday morning, I called Diane Foster. Diane had been practicing real estate and estate law in Columbus for 19 years. I had used her firm twice before. Once when I bought the Linden Street property, once when I restructured the lease agreement after my father's medical situation. She knew the file. She picked up on the second ring. I want to transfer full ownership of the Linden Street property to my parents, I said. Free and clear. Outright gift. No encumbrances, no conditions, no retained rights. A pause. Most people who come to me with a family property are trying to keep it away from family members, she said. I'm not most people's daughter, I said. How long does the transfer take? 2 weeks for clean documentation. Are you sure about the conditions? Nothing retained, nothing retained. I paused. They should own it. They should have always owned it. That part is a genuine gift. The rest of it is something else. She understood enough not to ask what the rest of it was. I hung up and opened my billing software. The monthly transfer to my parents' account, canceled. The catering balance, I had paid the deposit, they could manage the remainder, removed. The prescription autopay I had set up through their pharmacy portal when the Part D gap hit last year, canceled. The lawn service, canceled. The cable and internet bundle I had added to my card when my father mentioned the bill had gone up, canceled. The furnace maintenance plan, canceled. The homeowner's insurance renewal I had been been paying since 2018. This one gave me a half-second pause, because lapsed insurance on a property has real consequences. But Diane had confirmed the transfer would include a 30-day notice period during which I remained the responsible party, and my parents would have time to add their own coverage. I set a calendar reminder to confirm they had done so. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this and better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. 11 minutes. 6 years of being the family's foundation. Canceled between a payroll return and a sandwich. I ate the sandwich. I went back to work. The box took 3 evenings to get right. Cream-colored. Heavy cardboard. The kind that has weight when you hold it. A navy ribbon. Maddie's favorite color. I had bought the ribbon specifically. Nobody at that party would know what the color meant except me, and that was fine. Some things are not for audiences. Inside, 4 items, in order. First, the deed to 412 Linden Street, transferred to Claire Marie Bishop and Robert James Bishop, jointly, free and clear. Diane's office had rushed the filing as a professional courtesy. I had held the deed for 6 years. It was theirs now, completely, truly, without any thread connecting it to me. Second, a letter on my firm's letterhead. 1 page, formal, notifying them that effective the date of the party, all financial support, the monthly transfer, the property expenses, the medical supplementals, the service accounts, was discontinued. Not a grievance letter, not an explanation. A formal notice, the kind I would send a client at the end of an engagement. Clean, documented, professional. Third, a 2-page accounting. Every payment, every transfer, every line item. From the first month I cut the lawn service check to the $100 catering deposit paid in August. The number in the bottom right cell of page 2 had 6 digits. I had built the spreadsheet in the same format I use for client financial reviews. Date, category, amount, cumulative total. Formatted so that anyone who read it would understand in 30 seconds the shape of what they were looking at. I had considered, briefly, whether including the accounting was the cruelest part of the box. I decided it was the most honest part. My mother had spent 6 years in a house without knowing the house had a foundation. The accounting was the foundation. She should see it. Fourth, the 2 torn halves of Maddie's birthday card. Happy 65th, Grandma. The careful marker letters. The cake with 65 individually counted candles, drawn with the patience of a 12-year-old who loved her grandmother enough to count. Torn down the middle, taped with a single piece of transparent tape on the back. Not repaired, just held together enough to be read. I placed a cream card inside the lid. On it, in my best approximation of my mother's own looping cursive, she had taught me to write that way, years ago at our kitchen table. 1 word, Madeline. The name my mother had not put on a guest list. The name on a place card for a seat my daughter was never offered, delivered in the seat of honor. I sealed the box with the navy ribbon and called a courier service. Saturday morning, Maddie wanted pancakes. We went to the place on Henderson that does the blueberry ones with the lemon butter. We sat at a window table. Maddie had her book. She is always reading, always. And I had my coffee, and we sat in the particular comfortable quiet that is the best thing about having a child who is also genuinely good company. At 3:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from the courier service. Delivered 3:38 p.m. Signed for C. Bishop. I read it once. Put my phone face down on the table. Push me on the swings? Maddie asked, looking up from her book. The park was 2 blocks away. Maddie is 12 and still likes the swings, which I consider one of her better qualities. I pushed her for 20 minutes while the afternoon light went gold in the way October light goes gold, and she trailed her sneakers in the wood chips and said nothing in particular, and I said nothing in particular, and it was one of the better hours I can remember. I learned what happened at the party in pieces over the following week. My sister Renee called on Sunday. My Aunt Pat, whose silence I have long since stopped holding against her, called on Tuesday. My father called on Wednesday, in the evening, and that was the call that told me everything I actually needed to know. The box had arrived during cocktail hour. My mother had set it aside to open with the gifts, which she did at a table with 40 guests seated around her, the kind of birthday tableau that had been staged for photographs. She opened the ribbon first, lifted the lid, took out the deed. She read the first paragraph. The color left her face. She set it down and took out the letter. The room had the quality of a party that has subtly changed key. People were still talking, still holding their drinks, but something in the energy had shifted the way energy shifts when the host is no longer performing ease. She read the accounting. This took longer. My father leaned over to read with her. I was told by Renee that he turned both pages, that he went through the line items, that he did not speak while he read. Then the torn card fell out. My Aunt Pat, who was seated 2 chairs down, said it fell from between the pages of the accounting and landed face up on the white tablecloth. The cake with the 65 candles, the careful letters, the clean tear down the middle. Nobody moved to pick it up. The cream place card had been tucked inside the lid. My mother lifted it last, or it fell out last. Accounts varied. Either way, it landed on the tablecloth beside the torn card. Madeline, in my mother's own cursive. The room was quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something has happened that everyone understands and nobody knows how to categorize. The head server, professional, oblivious to the specific weight of the moment, simply doing his job, leaned down at exactly that moment and asked the question that, in 6 years of automatic payments and invisible infrastructure, had never once needed asking. Ma'am, the card on file was removed. Will you be providing an alternate payment method for the balance this evening? Or, my father picked up the cream place card from the tablecloth. He read the 1 word on it. He set it down. He turned to my mother. What did you do? Not what did Laura do? Not asking for an explanation of the box or the deed or the accounting, asking asking her, with the specific weight of a man who has just read a 6-year spreadsheet and understood, in the space of a catered birthday party, the shape of something he had been standing next to without seeing. He was not asking me. For the first time in 40 years of marriage, he was asking her. My father came to my house the following Wednesday evening. He called first, which he had not done before, had always simply appeared, the way parents appear when they have decided something. But he called and asked if he could come, and I said yes, and he sat at my kitchen table with his coat still on for the first 3 minutes of our conversation, which told me what I needed to know about how he was carrying this. He had gone through the accounting twice more since the party. He said this not as an accusation of himself, but as a fact, the way he reports facts. He said the number, he said the years, he said he hadn't known. I know you didn't, I said. I should have asked, he said. Yes. He was quiet. How long has Maddie been? He stopped. How long has your mother been? I've been noticing it for 3 years, I said. I've been making excuses for it for 3 years. The dinner was the one I couldn't make an excuse for. He nodded. She's a good kid, he said. About Maddie. The way he said it, direct, unqualified, was the way he had not been talking about Maddie at any table in recent memory, and something in me eased at the sound of it. She is, I said. He took his coat off. He stayed for 2 hours. My father called Maddie the following Saturday morning. I did not arrange this. I found out because Maddie came into the kitchen while I was making coffee and said Grandpa called, with an expression I hadn't seen from her in a while, the open, slightly surprised look of a person who has been given something they'd stopped expecting. He said, "Can we go to the Air and Space Museum?" she said. He said I could bring my book in case it was boring, but he bet it wouldn't be. I looked at my daughter's face. What did you tell him? I asked. I said yes, she said, like it was obvious, like she was already slightly past it, and on to the next thing. She got a bowl of cereal, opened her book. I turned back to the coffee. My mother and I have not spoken since the dinner. She sent a text 10 days after the party, a short one, asking if we could talk. I replied that I needed time. She did not push, which was either restraint or recognition, and I am not yet in a position to know which. There is real damage between us. Damage that has a history longer than one dinner and one box. Damage that is the accumulated weight of being the capable one, the reliable one, the invisible foundation, the daughter who could be counted on, and therefore could be taken for granted. I built that dynamic as much as she did. I paid her catering deposit, and then didn't tell anyone I'd paid it. I set up the prescriptions without announcement. I bought a house and called it a gift when it was also, in some honest part of me, a way to stay necessary, to make myself someone she couldn't afford to lose. Dr. Carol Mathis, the therapist I started seeing in November, 21 years in family systems, a practice in Grandview Heights, said something in our third session that I have been sitting with since, that the people who make themselves invisible foundations often do so because visibility felt dangerous early on, and that the resentment which eventually builds is real and legitimate, and also in part a resentment toward themselves for agreeing to the arrangement in the first place. I wrote that down. I am still working out what to do with it. Last week, Maddie came home from school with a project, an oral history of a family member. She had to interview someone and present their story. She asked if she could interview me. I said yes. She sat across from me at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. She has started using legal pads, I don't know when this happened, and she asked me questions for an hour about my firm, about how I started it, about what I was doing at her age, about what I wished someone had told me when I was 12. I thought about that last one for a moment. That being reliable doesn't mean being invisible, I said. That you can show up for people without disappearing into the showing up. That the people worth showing up for will notice you're there. She wrote it down, all of it, in the careful, unhurried handwriting of a kid who is paying attention. She closed the legal pad. Did Grandma notice? She asked. I looked at my daughter. Your grandfather did, I said. Eventually. She nodded. Thought about that. That's something, she said. She's 12 years old. She is going to be fine.